Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the Podcast Mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Greetings, digital trailblazers, and welcome back to another compelling episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better, and today we are in a treat with a seasoned marketing and growth leader. Today's guest is a maestro in scaling venture-backed hyper-growth startups, leaving an indelible mark on renowned companies such as Tynker, Roku, IMVU, Texture, and TrustedID. Beyond his impressive track record, he's a well-known public speaker, trusted advisor, a distinguished member of the Forbes Council, and the author of Lean AI, a bestseller in the Lean Startup series by Eric Ries. His expertise is not just in growing businesses, but in sharing valuable insight with the world. Now, without further ado, let's welcome our guest, an influential figure in the world of marketing and growth, Lomit Patel. Lomit, welcome.
Hey, Phil. Great to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. I hope I didn't overdo it with the welcome and put too much pressure on you. Because I know sometimes my guests feel a little overwhelmed with the hype I give them.
I appreciate the welcome message, but a little bit of pressure, but I'll try to handle it.
I think you'll be fine once we just get past the intro and we get into the first question. So let's just jump into it. Why did you become an entrepreneur? What was it about the world of entrepreneurship? Why? What was your why? So
my why, for the most part, I've always seen entrepreneurship as being the underdog, and that's something that I've been able to relate to from a young age, because for the most part, I grew up playing sports and I wasn't necessarily the first pick, but I always use that as motivation to just work harder and try harder to get onto different teams, and I ended up playing sports, primarily soccer, all the way through high school and part of college. And but the other thing about entrepreneurship that really got me excited was learning about all these different startups that were, at that time, because I grew up in England, but seeing all of these companies come from nowhere, like Amazon and Microsoft, that go on to dominate these behemoths, and so that just knowing that journey, that you can apply that underdog mindset to businesses as well, was something that really excited me. So that was a connection of my why. It's because ultimately I feel in the world you need dreamers, and all dreams always start small, and everyone's an underdog, trying to make the dream come alive.
I love that. And it's true. Everybody's an underdog when it comes to their dream. And entrepreneurship is the ultimate underdog story, because we're coming from nowhere to become big. I'm curious, what was your first ever entrepreneurial journey? What was it that kind of bit you and you're like, this is what I want to do?
Ironically, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents owned a small chain of wine stores, and growing up, I was always helping out in the business, and my role was literally to do everything from working on the shop to coming up with marketing ideas to try and help drive awareness for the business. So as well as just working and managing people from a young age, and so for me, just being exposed to that, I felt gave me a little bit of confidence, because for the most part you don't really know what you're doing and you're just figuring it out, and so
we're not supposed to tell that secret.
I know.
Once you become an entrepreneur, that's the secret. Everybody tells
I know, but a sense of confidence comes from the fact, I guess, from a young age, because I remember my parents telling me they never knew anything either, but it's it's all about just taking one step in front of the other and just keep trying and learning, and ideally, keep talking to people that are further ahead on that journey and that you want to get to, and see what you can learn from people. And so, I would say, just for the most part, embracing a growth mindset from a young age, where when nobody really bailed me out, it was like, hey, go figure it out. And so I just tried to figure it out. And the best way to figure it out, for me, what I learned was to approach things from the mindset of being curious, and just curiosity and humility of just saying, hey, I don't really know this, but I know, that you've done this. Can you help, show me or teach me or give me some advice on what I should be doing? And that, I would say, is potentially the secret for the most part. Just try to find people that are smarter than you, that are further ahead, and just keep asking them, and that will just inch you further and further along that journey, right? And then as you keep moving up, you have to just finding people that are even, further ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, you just gave away the secret of this podcast about making a win-win, interviewing people who are further along in this digital entrepreneur journey than you are, and so that you can pick their brains and this value exchange. So fast forward, you were working in your parents' wine shops or alcohol-based shops, learning everything, particularly about marketing, which pays dividends, obviously, future roles. How did you go from working at mom and pop's shop to now being the chief growth officer at Tynker? Like, was there a lot more mini entrepreneurial journeys, or was there just one big job, 9 to 5, and then you're like, okay, jumping off, doing this my own thing?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was never a linear journey, right, in any career. But for me, it really started off as a dream. Being young, one thing I knew, working in retail, it's a hard job. And I have a lot of empathy for people that work in retail. It's long hours, it's hard work, but the thing that I was able to do during those hours was also the dream. And I started reading a lot about a lot of these tech startups, and it kind of fascinated me, and I knew ultimately, I really would love to work for a tech startup, because, the scale that you can get in terms of learning and growing when companies are growing at that velocity is so much different from like working in a mom and pop store for me, and so my why was really the opportunity to learn and grow myself at a much faster rate. And I always was fascinated with marketing, primarily, even when I was doing it, for my parents, because it was all about understanding the customer at the end of the day, and really understanding, what's the value that they see, not the value that you think they see. So it was all about talking to customers. So I was always doing market research from a young age and being exposed to understanding the customer and coming up with ways to better pitch and present kind of our offering, and then understanding the competitors that we were competing against. So, for the most part, it was, I would say, I knew I really wanted to get in startups, and I knew it wasn't going to happen where I was. And so ultimately, the biggest bet that I took at that time was to sort of go to grad school in the US, and I literally saved up enough money just to make it out to get into grad school. And that's where I was really floored, because then I started getting myself around people that, for the most part, just opened my eyes into, how, all the different opportunities that really exist in this amazing country. And the fact that, if, it's really about your environment, I feel, and so, for me, even at a young age, I knew if I want to be in startups, I have to figure out a way to get to Silicon Valley. And so that's what I did. Once I got into Silicon Valley, for the most part, it's all about convincing someone to take a chance on you. And if someone takes a chance on you, and I was fortunate to have had, several companies that took chances on me. Every company that I worked for at the end really helped, mold and shape me to become a better marketer and growth leader to propel me into the next role and opportunity. And, so in order to get to Chief Growth Officer, what I would say is it's all about just learning and growing yourself and surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, so you can learn and grow from them at a much faster rate. And the luck part of it is really just how do you, come across people like that. And so, if you want to work in high growth startups, you need to sort of be in the environment where a lot of these high growth startups are being created. And so for me, that was sort of moving to San Francisco.
I love that. And speaking of this, you being a trusted advisor to various companies and working with so many successful companies in your career up until this point, in that experience, what is a common misconception that entrepreneurs often have about scaling their businesses? And how can they navigate through these misconceptions to achieve that sustainable growth that you've been able to help companies get?
Yeah, I would say, the biggest misconception is really sort of thinking that if you build something that they will come. That generally doesn't happen. I mean, ultimately, what you want to build is something that people are going to really value. And the question is, it has to be at least like 10 or 100 times better than what's already out there, or else why are people going to, change from going from one solution to your solution, right? So the idea, for the most part, is, and this is the reality, what I tell everyone, entrepreneur and founder that I work with, don't get in love with the idea, get in love with really understanding what the customer wants, and then try to iterate the product to really, fit the mold of what the user wants. Because every business at the end of the day, if it survives or not, is based on how your customers vote to whether they want to engage with you or not. So that's the, I mean, business is the greatest infinite game. It's democratized as far as, you could try to rig it, but you're not going to win if customers don't end up coming to you at the end of the day, right?
And I like how you brought it. It is the most powerful form of democracy because everybody has a vote. Like, a lot of people are disenfranchised with the political system in their country, around the world, and we're not going to jump into politics, but a lot of people say you vote with your dollar. Like, if we don't like a business or what a business is doing, we can look at what some businesses are. The biggest example, what happened to Bud Light when they did this small marketing budget. A lot of their core demographic was against the marketing choice that they did. Or we can even look at what McDonald's had to get rid of Ronald McDonald in the late 2000s because of the clown scare going on. And again, that's because people were scared of and voted with their dollars. And I love how you say, like, your business ain't growing, you can rig it for a bit. And I love that political analyst, because it's really true. It's the truest form of democracy. People voting with their dollars. What is it that you primarily do as a chief growth officer at Tynker? Like, I've heard many people call themselves a CGO, or they're calling I'm a growth expert. What is your role pretty much at Tynker?
So my role at the end of the day, to really simplify, it's all about driving revenue for the business. So and that really starts from managing all of our marketing and really influencing our product, because my role and my team is really responsible for how we acquire customers, how we retain, engage, and monetize those customers. So it's the whole gamut of the entire marketing funnel. And for the most part, it's if I have to use an analogy from I kind of see myself as a quarterback, because for the most part I have to figure out all the different plays, but I can't, I and my team can't do it on our own. We have to really work well with all of the other players on the team across different teams and functions. For example, we're the ultimate advocate for the customer, knowing what the customer wants. And then it's about working through teams to prioritize, hey, let's run these different experiments on the product to validate that hypothesis. And so that's working through different teams to A/B test different features or different product experiences. It's working through our finance team to get budgets to really run different marketing campaigns to really figure out with every dollar we're spending, what's the return that we're getting back for the business in terms of growth. And so a lot of it is working cross-functionally with the CEO and the board to ultimately get them to buy into a strategy that, hey, this is what we're going to be working on to take the business from X to Y this year. And X to Y can be defined as, in terms of revenue, or it could be defined in terms of new customer growth. It could be defined in terms of distribution or market share or brand awareness. But ultimately, everything it's measurable, and it's about, hey, these are the different levers you have to work with. But ultimately, you have to get the business from this outcome to this outcome.
I love it. And it's interesting. I like how you're bringing in. We just had the Super Bowl this past weekend, dating when we're recording this. But I love how you say you're the quarterback of the team, the company, because the CEO is the coach. He tells you this is what I want, and then he just tells the players, and all the players and all the teams inside the business have to work together. I love that analogy, and it's a great one for business. Now, if we're looking at someone who is just starting their entrepreneurial journey and they're looking to become like the chief growth officer of a business or of their own business or anything like that, what would you advise them to do to start this journey on? Now they're very young, or they're looking to pivot in their career. Where would you tell them to start, or where should they start, or what kind of advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is ultimately, what I generally tell everyone in the company is that we're all chief growth officers, because if the business isn't growing, none of us are going to be around to keep the business going, right? So I think it's a mind shift, first of all, to really feel that no matter whatever role or function you're working in, it is how is it helping to support the bigger strategy for the company, and the bigger strategy is always around some form of growth. And so my advice to anyone thinking about going into growth is ultimately to feel that whatever you're doing is impacting growth. For example, customer service. I mean, that's a huge differentiator. If you have great customer service, then people are going to rave about how much they love doing business with your company, and that's going to drive word of mouth. So that's going to drive exponential growth, where people are going to just tell other people about, hey, how great this company is to work with. And that's driven, a lot of growth for so many like high growth startups, just referrals and word of mouth. Another thing is, like, if you're working as a coder, then you want to write the best possible code you can, so that you don't have to keep going back and cleaning that code up later on and creating this term called tech debt, which is basically all this bad code builds up, and then you have to eventually go back and clean it up, and it can hemorrhage the business, right? So my advice is whatever role you're doing is to think yourself as being, it's something related to growth, and try to like talk to people in different teams and try to figure out like, how can you support them? Because ultimately, we're all part of this interconnected mode of where, whatever you're doing is ultimately helping to empower or support somebody else to do better, right? And collectively, if we all do better, then the business does better.
I love that the rising tide lifts all
Yeah.
ships.
Yeah.
Again, not only inside of business, in the world as well. But yeah, Lomit, running, being an author in a best-selling series is incredible. First of all, how did that come about? And I have a follow-up. First, I want to know, how did that come about? Like, how did you get picked to be like, hey, I'm going to use you to talk about lean AI?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it definitely didn't come about by me just waking up and saying, "Hey, I want to be an author one day." But the reality is, just like with everything that comes about, I would say it's all about serendipity in terms of timing and connections. And so I was fortunate to work for this company called IMVU, which is actually um, the same company that Eric Ries, who wrote the really famous book, The Lean Startup, was a co-founder at. And so, when I joined IMVU, it was at kind of a pivotal and challenging moment where, for the most part, the revenue wasn't going in the right direction, and it was about pivoting into mobile. And so I was able to come in at a time where I was able to influence how to turn the IMVU, which was kind of a web gaming app, into a really successful mobile gaming app. And we were able to achieve that primarily outside of everything else that we did to really, across the company. But one thing that was really a big driver was paid user acquisition. So really getting better and smarter at how we were able to invest and spend our money on platforms like Google and Facebook and TikTok and Snapchat and all of these social networks, as well as these different other platforms that you can spend on. And the way that we went about solving for that was to build this AI and automation platform that enabled us to really sort of run the business like stock traders. We literally had this machine that we built, an algorithm that was literally working 24/7, 365 days a year, looking for arbitrage opportunities of trying to find the users we wanted to go after across these different platforms and bid in real time on the most optimal time to find them across, different time zones in different countries. And so we expanded the product in different places, but this machine became the genesis of how we grew from nowhere to becoming the second highest grossing app with hundreds of millions in revenue, literally in the space of like 5 years. And we were growing compoundingly every year, double digits. And so, that in itself became the story. And, I was joking with Eric Ries, like, do you think this could be an interesting story to write a book about? And that's how, he said, yeah, I mean, this could be a great thing to become part of the Lean Startup series, because he has a lot of other authors that have written books about different functional expertise. And this really made a lot of sense, because it really kind of took the whole premise of the Lean Startup, which is ultimately what we were doing, but we were doing it on steroids because we had AI and automation running all of these experiments. So instead of running a couple of, let's say like 5 to 10 experiments a week, we started running like 5 to 10,000 experiments a month. And so imagine, like, if anyone who gets the exposure to run that number of experiments, you are going to get better, right? Because you're going to learn so much faster. And so I started speaking at conferences and got a lot of positive feedback. And so, from that, once I spoke to Eric and he introduced me to O'Reilly's, it was no turning back, because it's one of those tickets where you get like, hey, do you want to be a published author? Yeah, of course. I love to.
No. I don't want to be a published author. No, I don't want that.
Yeah.
On my resume. Jesus.
Yeah, but what I will say is that, it's. Did I know how to, like, what was going to be involved in writing that? no, but it's like anything, you dive in and then you figure it out.
I love that. And I love that just diving in and figuring it out. It's the ethos of the
Yeah,
entrepreneur, jumping off the cliff and building the plane on the
yeah,
way down, all these amazing things, which goes back to bringing it back to the core secret of entrepreneurship. No one knows what they're doing, and we're all making it up as we go along.
yeah,
I feel like Drew Carey at that with saying I'm on the whose line is it anyways?
yeah.
Lomit, I'm having a great time chatting with you, and I'm glad that we were able to connect. And I want to know, because you're someone who's deeply involved in the world of marketing and growth, what's one personal investment or habit that you believe has contributed significantly to your success as an entrepreneur? And how can our listeners apply a similar mindset to investing in themselves within the entrepreneurial dream?
Yeah, just going back to what I said earlier, ultimately, the success of any business really depends on happy customers, right? So really being, and I know the word's thrown around customer centric, but really deeply understanding your customers. And so, if you work in marketing and growth, I feel ultimately somebody has to be the biggest advocate for the customer. It's kind of like if you think of a union, right? Unions represent different members, and and at the executive table, no one's really, talking about what the customer wants. It's all about what the business wants. And that's where, if you really want to be successful in marketing growth, you have to be the voice, kind of, always saying, yes, that's good for the business, but what's good for the customer? And, I would say Jeff Bezos was a great example of this, because at Amazon, they used to have this empty chair, right? That used to be the chair where he would always say, what would our customers be saying if they were sitting in that chair? So, my advice to anyone is try to be the biggest advocate for the customer, and ensure that you are sharing that information broadly across the company, because for the most part, everybody kind of gets stuck in their silos thinking about what they're doing, but ultimately, bringing it back to the biggest why is you're delighting the customer. If the customer is really happy, then the business is set up for success.
I love it. Great piece of advice. We are coming to the end, which again, Lomit, I'm going to have you come back on to talk about more of your amazing story and more advice that you can give. But we're going to finish with my favorite question, because as everyone knows, I'm a child at heart, and I'm also writing a book for my nephew who's young, and I want to give him a whole bunch of advice. So, Lomit, I have transported your 10-year-old self right beside me. He's a Spitfire. He just got off working at mom and dad's shop. What is the one piece of advice you want to give your 10-year-old self, so that he can have a better life, or, just have a bit of a head start?
It's funny. I mean, when I think about myself growing up, one of the things is confidence, right? Is how do you just get more confidence to just try things? And, what I would say to my younger self, because one of the things that really stopped me from trying new things when I was young was really just getting so paranoid about what people would think if I tried something and it didn't really work out, or if I embarrassed myself or whatever. But the reality is, what I've come to realize over time is that you're not really that important at the end of the day. People, I don't have enough time to really be thinking about you as much as you think they're thinking about you. And so, what I would tell my younger self, actually, the best time to try stuff is when you're young, because for the most part, people don't really have any real high expectations, and you can just try a lot of things to really figure out what's going to kind of end up becoming kind of your passion. And if you find something that you're really passionate about, no matter how many obstacles you're going to come across, you'll always keep pushing through because you really love it that much.
God dang it! Another amazing piece of advice from another a crazy accomplished entrepreneur in Lomit Patel. Lomit, I'm going to jump off stage. I want you to tell my audience where they can connect with you, where they can find you, all that great stuff. And just so that they can connect and maybe have you as a mentor. The floor is yours.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited. The best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I put a lot of great content on there. So, and I also have a newsletter that I publish where I'm sharing a lot of tips around entrepreneurship and startups and how you can potentially be successful growing any startup from an early stage all the way to a hyper growth startup that could potentially go IPO, get acquired. So definitely follow me on LinkedIn for a lot of great content. And also, if you have kids, I would definitely encourage you to go check out Tynker, where actually the largest gaming app that teaches kids to learn to code, and learning to code is a great way to give kids the confidence to be able to get comfortable with technology, especially with a lot of the skills that are going to be needed for the future of work. So definitely go check out Tynker as well, tynker.com. Thank you.
Well, I'm definitely going to go check out Tynker because I want to learn to code, and why not have it in a game type method? But I'll definitely be showing that to my sister so that she can show my nephew and he can start coding. He's already doing multiplication tables. He's 5 years old. I don't understand it. Anyways, Lomit, thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I can't wait to have you back on to talk about everything else you're doing in your world. So thank you again for being an amazing guest.
Thanks, Phil. It was a pleasure and love to be back.
Excellent. To my audience, as you know, the show notes will have all the links to Tynker, to connect with Lomit and all that amazing stuff. So make sure you go check out that down in the show notes. And remember to always invest in yourself.